Welcome to One Up Fantasy, helping you one up the fantasy football competition. For the latest in Chicago sports news, visit ChiCitySports.com. And now, here are the hosts of One Up Fantasy, Stephen Johnson and Chris Jackle. Kaboom!
Greetings and salutations, one and all. Welcome into a brand new episode of One Up Fantasy here on ChiCitySports.com and the Tape Never Lies Network. I'm Stephen Johnson. He is Chris Jackle. The 2021 season's finally over with a Super Bowl that felt weird. I think has never really had that ebb and flow, but nevertheless, it was a game. Had some questionable situations to occur, but what do we think of that Super Bowl on Sunday?
Did you call it the Stupor Bowl? Is that what you just called it? How we doing, Mr. Johnson? You know, I mean, it was a game. You know, it was It looked like it was going to be a fucking boat race. You know, the Rams were going to put it to the frickin' Bengals in the beginning. I don't think if OBJ didn't get hurt, I thought they were going to just blow the doors off them. And you know, unfortunately, the turf was too high, and OBJ blew his knee out, and it gave the Bengals that sense of urgency where they, you know, in that need where they had a shot. So, still a little boring in that second half, but Aaron Donald was offsides in the last play. So, what are you going to do?
Referees, the zebras, the black and whites. Plenty to talk about from their ends of things, but I mean, it was.
What'd you think?
You know. I think that that missed face mask on the 75-yard touchdown. I mean, I don't know how you can miss that. Don't know about the phantom holding call. You mentioned the offsides. I mean, there were missed calls on both sides that led to serious plays. That's all there is to it. It happens in every game. It just so happens it was a large game this time around that led to a lot of
penalties. So. Next thing you know, I mean, I have a question, just in general thought, like watching the game. If you are the Bengals and they're knocking on the doorstep, you're trying to prevent. I mean, they were aggressively trying to keep them from catching the balls. I mean, you could just literally tackle a guy before he catches it till you run out of time. I guess is what they were trying to do. I don't know. It was just kind of shocking. I was like, what the fuck? You know, Eli Apple ate a bunch of crow too, you know, running his yap. But I mean, will say,
that's Eli Apple though.
Yeah, I mean, come on, what do you expect? You know, but Ramsey was caught, and you know, there's video evidence of him holding fucking Chase and Boyd all game, man. You know, so it's like, yes, there was that blatant face mask, but he got away with some shit too. It's the game, but here we are. The season has concluded. 2021 has wrapped up, and I know there's some things to talk about as we finish the season. Cooper Kupp had a season of seasons of careers, or however you want to put it. I think Jerry Rice was the only other guy to have all those accolades, the Triple Crown and the whole nine. I know you know all of the stats, but he did that in his career. Cooper Kupp did it in one season, and that's just mind-numbing to think. And he's going to be 30 years old this year. But anyway. I digress. What do you think about
that is a very impressive thing, and we're going to talk about wide receivers all night, so it's a good segue into it. With just the fact that, you know, for what Cooper Kupp has become in this league, and the fact that this connection with Matthew Stafford has essentially put him over the top as the wide receiver in the NFL, at least from a fantasy standpoint. Yeah, you can argue all day that there are much more talented wide receivers out on the field, even one that was across the field from him on Sunday night in Jamar Chase. However, again, a wide receiver who got an MVP vote for the first time since Randy Moss back with the Vikings. I mean, that's wild to think about that. It still blows my mind that Calvin Johnson never got one during his 2,000-yard season, but you know, it's just one of those weird things. NFL, you never know what goes into it all, but nevertheless, like you mentioned, you know, being a guy who accomplished so much in a year that only Jerry Rice has done, and like you mentioned, over several years. It now becomes a case of, okay, we saw how good he was in putting up in half PPR leagues this year, 367 fantasy points, just obliterating the competition. But he's 28 years old. So it's not like he's a spring chicken by any means. And, you know, I say that being 5 years older than the guy, and I'm well removed by that
Oh,
standard.
fuck you, dude. I'm 44, man. Don't, you're rubbing it in with that shit.
But regardless of this, now you have this question of how much longer can Cooper Kupp keep up this type of play. And obviously having guys like Odell Beckham Jr., Robert Woods when he was healthy, even Van Jefferson to an extent across from him, that he's going to not deal with those triple teams in coverage to where he is able to do things. And, you know, the Rams just said, F it on Sunday. We're going to force feed them regardless of how many guys you try and stick on him. And there's the one pass from Matt Stafford that was just a beautiful throw that kept that game-winning touchdown drive going.
No look pass.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it happened, I mean, it was just like
it went unnoticed during the game. People didn't even see it during the game. You know, like fans saw it on this, you know, and like Twitter reacted and what have you. But like, I think Al and the boys missed the whole thing. They didn't see that at all. You know, it was beautiful. Yeah, Stafford's been doing that his entire career. You know, it wasn't Mahomes that brought that to the game. You know, I mean, there's many quarterbacks that will say Stafford has been a magician like that throughout his career with respects to the no-look pass. But sorry, little tangent there. But age is important. I just want to add to that, you know, Cooper Kupp is right on the he's on that cusp. That 30-year-old line for NFL standards is like a kiss of, you know, it's like a kiss of death, unfortunately. I think there were like, I was looking for the numbers while you were talking about it, but there's many receivers that are 29 this year, you know, like Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Brandon Cook, Devontae Parker. And I think this year we have Keenan Allen, Robert Woods, Tyler Lockett, DeAndre Hopkins, Jarvis Landry, and Odell Beckham are all going to be 30. And that's a scary number and a scary list to think about because there's some production on that list, you know. And I just think it's extremely important to kind of take that into consideration as we talk about fantasy and we look at 2022 and wide receivers tonight. But age is, you know, it's not just a number, but in NFL standpoints, it does mean something just based on statistics. So I just was throwing that out there as we kind of talk here. But yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp 2022, Matt Stafford, you know, I read that they're looking to extend Kupp. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen?
You know, I think it would be imperative for them to do that. To basically say, all right, we put all the chips in, we got the ring, you know, let's roll. See you guys later. Type situation. I mean, hell, God knows what's going to happen with OBJ too, with this torn ACL that he'll more or less miss at least a month, if not 2 months of the NFL season at best. With what's going on there. And even Robert Woods, who tore his ACL. I mean, this could be a brand new Rams passing game for all we know next season, which is crazy to think.
Did they become the new Tampa, you know, where guys go there to take like the vet min and come play, try to ring chase, you know, with the things. I mean, they don't have any first round picks until like 2045, but I mean, it's like,
hey, it worked. It worked. Yeah. That's all you can say.
They went 4-1. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. You throw enough first round picks at other teams to grab their best players, they're obviously going to pay off at some point, more or less. But, you know, with what Cooper Kupp brings to that offense, I mean, thankfully, from the wide receiver position, the cliff is a little bit further out than what the running back position is. And so you can buffer out that extra year or two until the production really starts to go down. And I think for who Cooper Kupp is in his career trajectory, with how he started off a little injury prone, he really had that moniker that he was carrying around there for the first couple of years he was in the league, which personally to me felt a little unnecessary and not necessarily, you know, he really never was someone that deserved that that expectation that, oh, you can't trust this guy to play 16, 17 games a year, blah, blah, blah. But a 3-year deal, you put him at like, what, 20 mil a year?
Yeah.
Carry him through the 32-year season. I think that's more than doable. And to what again, the dynamic that he brings, it's not necessarily something where you have to worry about him, losing that strength going up top on a deep route, because that's not who Cooper Kupp is.
Exactly.
As long as he maintains that shiftiness. And I don't think that's something that they're really going to have to be concerned about. Maybe the last year of that deal, if they do end up doing something like that. But again, that is the Rams offense. You saw how bad the running game was. It was on full display. The Cam Akers, might not be as good as people anticipated him to be. There's only so much time you can have to shake off the rust. And the question becomes, okay, is that time done, or is this really the Cam Akers that we can anticipate seeing in 2022? Yeah. But all of the other unknowns, you have to put some type of investment into that offense outside of what you have with Matt Stafford at quarterback, and give Matt Stafford somebody, or this is just Detroit 2.0 with a ring, is ultimately what the offense could become here.
And if McVay even comes back, he's said today that he's not, a wait and see type of thing. But I was looking at he's missed 10 games in his career. Cooper Kupp's missed 10 games. I think missed 1 game his rookie year, missed 8 games his second year, and then he missed 1 game in the last 3 seasons. So There's been, so the last 3 seasons he's been pretty durable, and it's nice to see with respects to how injuries have just gone in the NFL, especially this past year. Granted, more on the running back side, but with respects to Cooper Kupp in 2022, do you think he holds that wide receiver 1 spot as we move forward here?
I would be surprised if he repeated as wide receiver 1. I think that, a lot of people will say, teams normally get smart like halfway through the year and learn how to defend guys, but with a full off season under their belt to try and shut him down, especially based on what the Rams salary cap situation is, as well as some of the decisions that they have to make regarding that offense as a whole. They got to replace Andrew Whitworth. They have to figure out what's going on at wide receiver 2 and 3, if they're going to allow Van Jefferson to try and take that step forward, as well as anything else, just protecting, that running game and that offensive line from, getting back to somewhat of a decent look. There's a fair amount of uncertainty that I think might play into teams will be allowed to focus a little bit more on shutting Cooper Kupp down, which in turn will shut down the Rams offense. I still think he's a top 10 wide receiver.
Okay.
Absolutely. Top 5. Absolutely. Repeating top 1. I still think that's up for debate. I would say Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and depending on where Davante Adams fall, they have better shots at being the overall wide receiver 1 next year.
Okay.
How about you?
It's an interesting take. I see Coop. I keep calling him Coop. I love that name, Coop. We almost named one of our sons Cooper, so it's like, but Cooper Kupp, I wouldn't hate on somebody as if they had him as their number 1 wide receiver in their rankings. Clearly the proof is in the pudding based on 2021. But there has to be some regression there. I'm with you on that. It's going to where he's at based on his age. I can't see him just stepping up to another level and taking that season that he had this year and replicating that. I don't think it's statistically not possible. It hasn't been done before. Who's to say it won't be? But I still think he's a top 3. I have Davante Adams and Justin Jefferson right up there with the rest of the group. Jamar Chase and Hill. Those guys are, you could say they're interchangeable, but I'd like to think that Davante, Adams is probably wide receiver 1. on my list with Cooper Kupp number 2. And you look at some of the other lists there, and a lot of people have Cooper Kupp number 1. And some of the best projections 1, worst projections 2. I haven't seen them 5 in your instance, but I can appreciate, where you're coming from. And I actually, I don't think you're wrong, because the guys you're talking about could have much better seasons for 2022. So I see your point. I may not necessarily, agree wholeheartedly.
Agree, right.
But I definitely could see him being, if the shoe fits, he'll wear that. In LA, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that there are so many wide receivers really in the top 10, if you take a look at who finished among the top at the position in 2021, we talked about that age cliff with Cooper Kupp, but I mean, Javonte Adams, he's getting up there in age.
He's going to be 30.
Tyreek Hill, I believe, is going to be 28 this year. Stephon Diggs, like you'd mentioned, Mike Evans, another one. Just a lot of guys that finished top 10, then not only age-wise, but also quarterback-wise, like Tampa Bay, for example. Who the hell is going to be throwing Mike Evans the ball? I mean,
that's a good point. As I dropped my phone near the microphone there, that must have sounded good, But there's something to be, I want to ask you in terms of stacking quarterback with top wide receivers. Are you a guy, and we've talked about it throughout the year, but as we've seen a shift in, injuries and the way things have played out with running backs, are you more in line to try to take a top wide receiver with a top quarterback and have that stack? Or are you going to try to go middle of the road, and try to a guy like, Davante Adams, obviously, Matt Stafford with Coop. We talked about those, but Kirk Cousins and Jimmy Garoppolo with Justin Jefferson and Samuel, you're still good there. What are your thoughts?
I tell you, I hate stacking wide receivers and quarterbacks.
Okay.
especially in leagues. Okay. I take that
PPR.
Back. I take back what I just said. In leagues where you have to set lineups, I hate doing it. In leagues in which I'm playing best ball, I love doing it. For the main focus that it ultimately optimizes what you get week to week. That being said, it is a go down with the ship mentality. So, I mean, if the quarterback has a stinker, chances are the wide receiver's having a stinker. Yeah. The one exception this year happened to be Cooper Kupp, who just didn't have a bad game the entire year. That being said, you could argue Matt Stafford had some not so great games along the way as well for the Rams. It's just one of those things where I think you just have to assess the situation in terms of what type of league you're in, but in terms of the stacks, just stacks in general, it just feels weird that it's one of those things that people go out and deliberately do. And yeah, you can argue, you got to deal with bye weeks. Oh, well, it's just 1 week out of 17 weeks that a team has to sit here and play. But at the same time, it always seems to come at the most inopportune time. And especially, again, we talked about injuries this year. Having injuries happen at the worst possible time and having these stacks where your bench can be depleted because you stack certain teams in certain situations, and all of a sudden you have no bench because of bye week and injury. It's just a very uneasy situation. And again, talking this year about how diluted standings were in fantasy leagues, where there really weren't a whole lot of 10-3 teams that were, running the table in fantasy leagues. It was maybe one really good team and then a bunch of 8 and 4s, 8 and 5s. Yeah, just very 500.
6 and 7s, vying for that last, those last 3 playoff spots are with 6 teams because everybody's so close in the standings.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point, Stephen. No,
and then that 1 week is what costs you.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is I just don't know from year to year if you can essentially trust it. That's the other thing. Can you trust that type
I'll say this. I'm going to interrupt you because I'm a guy
that
I'm a stacker. I'm a guy that, I stacked Kyler Murray with, Hopkins this year. And it wasn't that I won the league, but it wasn't because of that stack. Kyler Murray was actually piss poor the second half of the year.
That he was.
And then Javonte, and DeAndre Hopkins was hurt, and so I did have Justin Jefferson on that team, and so I was pretty fortunate on the other side there. But if the situation presents itself in the draft, I always have a couple of guys that I'm looking at in terms of stacking. But if it's not presenting myself, I'm not going to go that route. You can't force that because, like you said, you're going to end up putting yourself in a bad situation. It's bad draft strategy to really try to force that. But if there's a couple of things that line up and there's the draft picks just kind of flow in that direction, and you could pull something off like that, it has worked and you can be successful. It's just you do have to be on your game with respects to managing the bye week, the waiver wire, all and budgeting and the whole nine. So it's just something to think about. And it's not always a great thing because I was thinking that like Ben Roethlisberger was a horrible quarterback, right? But
that he was.
Deontay Johnson was an amazing wide receiver, so it's like you don't need to have, there's a guy that's going to eat, and Deontay was that guy for Pittsburgh, and I think that that's just something to also add to it is the stack isn't the way to go because you can actually find gold elsewhere. But you really need to have that strategy when you get into your draft and be ready to roll if something does kind of line up for you. So a little stacking action there for you,
Stacking action.
Stacking action. Stacking action, back in action. Hey.
But, beyond this, I saw a question from Bob here, and this is, I think, what is ultimately going to shake down how the standings ultimately end up going, or the rankings ultimately end up going for wide receiver is the situation in Green Bay. If it is opportunity for Green Bay to sign both Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, I don't think it's happening. I really don't. For as much as people want to say you can skew the salary cap to do whatever you want, they might be a little further in the hole to keep that from happening to an extent where they can be competitive. That Aaron Rodgers has flat out said, I'm not going to be a part of a rebuild in any shape or form. What the Packers were in 2021 ain't happening again under any circumstances. And yeah, I guess if they depleted the majority of that defense, if they depleted some of the other pieces, and then Aaron Rodgers took like a Drew Brees type deal. Fun fact, the Saints paid Drew Brees $11.5 million on the cap this year. They'll do the same thing next year. And as you'll notice, the Saints are in a much significantly worse situation than the Packers are, that the Packers would essentially have to do the same exact thing. And yes, the cap is going up in future years with all of this TV money that's about to flourish.
Yep.
But at the same time, you cannot do that to your team. And it's going to be worse. It's not going to be 11.5 million. We're probably talking north of 20 million in years where Aaron Rodgers won't be in a uniform that the Packers are still going to have to pay him. And that's not even taking into consideration anything else that they have to do with that roster in cutting players.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if they were back. And then the question becomes, where does Davante Adams go? Yep. And I know we talked about the landing spots as some of the opportunities that are sitting out there. If it is the Broncos, if it is the Chargers, again, you even talk about Tampa with the fact that Chris Godwin is gone, and the head case that is Antonio Brown is gone. I mean, this is the time for Davante Adams to kind of understand his worth
he's going to get
this
paid.
league, which is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah. And it's his last shot at a bag too, right? I mean, he doesn't have to sign the franchise tag, the tender. He has to sit out. Was it 8 weeks if you don't sign it? I forget what the rule is. Or is it the season? I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head.
I don't know off the top of my head.
But I mean, they could try to franchise tag him, but the whole fact that they're going to want to pay Rodgers, make him the highest paid quarterback is just, they're cut off their nose to spite their face. It's just stupid. You can add all the avoidable years, but like you said, it's going to kill them in the long run. And they could have avoided this shit years ago by just not drafting Jordan Love and playing their cards right. But fuck them. They did what they did, and they deserve this fucking shit. So fuck Green Bay, and let's keep it moving.
Make your bed, you lie in it. I mean,
exactly. And I hope Javonte, Adams, if he wants to come to Chicago and team up with Justin Fields, maybe take a 8-year deal with a $20 million signing bonus for year one. Then, hey, let's, get us to 2023 where we got $100 million under the cap, But outside of that, there's some great landing spots for Adams if he does ultimately leave Green Bay. I would love to see him out west if I'm not going to see him in the old navy and orange. Maybe with the Chargers, that'd be pretty electric to see him with Justin Herbert. What about going to Denver and playing with, Denver moves some of their young receivers, some draft capital, and bring Adams in.
To think of how good that receiving core is,
it is
in
fucking
Denver.
Crazy. We talked about it last week.
Yeah, but I mean, you got Cortland Sutton, you have Jerry Jeudy, you have Tim Patrick who came on as well, then Noah Fant and Albert O. It's a hell of a receiving core already, and to think that they could add Davante Adams to that mix, and yes, they need they need a quarterback more than anything, and obviously makes a lot more sense from a perspective there that Aaron Rodgers would be the Packer to go to. The Broncos versus Davante Adams. It's one of those things where would I be surprised if it happens? No, not at all. Okay. But in terms of the probability, on the fence. Apparently, Smo brings up a good point too. You can't forget about Javonte Williams, who is going to be and I cannot wait for Javonte Williams' season to happen. End of story.
We talked about that last week too, right? About Williams and the potential there, especially with how elusive he was. I didn't realize the stats, as we talked about that, is he really is hard to tackle. Led the league, and that was surprising. To be fair, when I did a little digging there, and George does bring up a good point, and I think it depends if Gordon comes back, or they might even draft another young back and just kind of let Williams eat and go from there.
Yep.
It's going to be fun to see. But I see here we had what do you think of Terry? Scary Terry.
Terry
with We Are Commanders. Bump, 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 bump.
We haven't talked. I'm sorry. I'm going to digress. Worst fucking name in the NFL.
Yeah, they're fucking idiots.
Oh God, so bad.
I just like hearing people. I mean, they're calling them, like the commies and all this stupid. I'm like, oh my goodness, really? Like this? It's like Jesus
That's
Christ.
What I thought.
Well, dude, I heard it on McAfee too. They're making up songs, and the guys are like, "Is that really our fucking anthem? Like, you guys are saying that at the game?" I forget who they had on. The guy was like, or Taylor Heineke was on. He was like, "Wait, we're doing that? Did I miss an email or something?" And they're like, "No, we're just fucking with you. It's that bad." I'm sorry. Oh my God.
The
Washington. All right, George is on fire. All right, George. I love it. But no, what do you think of Scary Terry? What are your thoughts? I mean, wide receiver 25, it looks like right around like that 23 to 26-ish range for 2022 and PPR. Do you think he deserves to be there?
He definitely fell, and he's definitely being drafted among where he finished in 2021, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah,
I expected him to creep back up because he was a darling in 2021 draft season because everybody thought Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to be the guy that was going to get Scary Terry to that next level because Ryan Fitzpatrick loves throwing the ball to his alpha wide receiver. Everywhere he's been, that's always happened when Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback. And now I think the question is, Taylor Heineke obviously isn't the answer in Washington. And so the question now becoming, who is the wide receiver? Or excuse me, who is the quarterback? Are they going to draft somebody? This
Mitchell.
Class, it's not the greatest. It doesn't really show the most promise in terms of a passer that could
Heineke
get.
Could be there again.
Bourne. I mean, he very well could be.
Yeah.
I mean, what else are you going to do in free agency? Andy Dalton? I mean, there's
We'll
not a
trade you
lot
Nick
there.
Foles, man. We'll trade you Nick Foles, but
do anything here.
But I mean, Scary Terry, 77 catches on 130 targets, almost 1,035 receiving yards, and how many touchdowns did he have? Do you know? I think he had. I'm trying to see it here, but computer's not working with me. 5 touchdowns. It's a pretty solid year considering the quarterback play. With fucking speed bump Charlie letting Fitzpatrick break his hip game 1, and then
hey, let's give him an extension. Break another one. But the thing about that, though, I mean, yes, it's impressive what McLaurin was able to do given Washington's quarterback situation here. I mean, it really was. I mean, like you mentioned, 130 targets, 77 catches. That's not bad. Like, it's not bad at all. It's just there's these weeks in here where you look and you're like, he just kind of disappeared. I mean, 4.8 points, 5 points, a 0 was in there.
2.8 against
6,
KC,
5,
6,
9. I mean, how many double-digit weeks? I think that's an easier number to equate here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 double-digit weeks in 2021 in half-point PPR. Not great. Not great at all.
Considering the points that were had at wide receiver, and
right,
the guys that did so well. And I read somewhere, I think on like Yahoo public leagues, right? 5 out of the top 10 MVPs out of all the leagues combined were wide receivers. And so I think, and that's mixing in the court, there's the one tight end, I think. And then you had some quarterbacks and Jonathan Taylor would have been the other one. It's the wide receivers were the guys that brought a lot of people to the championship and won you some money outside of Rashad Penny. Not Rashad Penny, our other guy there helped me out.
DK Metcalf?
Penny. Jesus, in the finals there. Yeah.
Like, what else are we talking about? That he was the game for Seattle.
Yeah. All right, there we go. But yeah, so it's I don't know. I'd like to see I'd like to see some I just lost my train of thought, but he had some games where he played every game this year is what I'm trying to get to. He's consistent. Yeah. I think if they could actually bring someone in that has a little bit more of not a 40-year-old veteran, but somebody that's aggressive and they can actually get him the ball more than, they did target him 130 times. But I think when you have almost a 50% catch, a successful catch rate, that speaks to some of the passes that are being thrown your way. And so I'd like to see him have a better supporting a better quarterback. I just think we may see that in 2023 and not 2022.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up some of his other stats here just to get an idea of where Terry McLaurin is for his metrics here, because you can see where his true catch rate is, his quality targets, based on what he's getting from his quarterback play, target accuracy. Okay. So playerprofiler.com does a very good job at diving a little bit deeper into the stats and grading out what's a catchable pass, what isn't a catchable pass. And one of their stats is target accuracy. So grades the accuracy of each throw on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 representing the least, 10 the most. Target accuracy for Terry McLaurin was a 6.8, which is good for 89th of all wide receivers in the NFL. So that shows you that target-wise wasn't getting the job done. And obviously Taylor Heineke not known for his arm strength by any means, and the fact that Terry McLaurin can stretch the field with his athleticism, with his skill set. You mentioned it, not a 40-year-old, not a Taylor Heineke type. That's, the feel-good story. As a quarterback, they need somebody that can drive the ball down the field, and that is not on the Commanders roster right now. Plain and simple.
They got a running back. Gibson, Antonio Gibson is a solid back. They have some weapons there. He rushed for over 1,000 yards this year, had almost 1,400 all-purpose yards. They have some dudes that can play ball. I think they get a quarterback, and they were in the hunt this year, but if they can get a consistent quarterback, I think that we'd be having a much different conversation regarding some of the fantasy output you're going to see from Terry, from Gibson. It's true. Commanders need to put some work in.
That they do, and hopefully get a Curtis Samuel healthy season as well after the money that they dropped on him to pluck him from Carolina. So plenty that can be improved in the Capitol. Who knows? Maybe they'll even have a new ownership group by the time the 2022 season rolls around. But speaking of Terry, the last thing we'll mention about this here, because right now, half PPR leagues, he is ranked as wide receiver 27. He is sandwiched between Amari Cooper, who is a potential free agent candidate if he does end up getting cut by Dallas, and Javonte Smith, the second-year wide receiver up in Philadelphia. A couple other names. I'll give you a list here. I'm kind of surprised about some of these.
I think I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
McLaurin.
Ahead? You're going to say, go ahead.
They're ahead of. Well, so we'll do the five ahead of him, and then we'll pick one. We'll do three behind him.
Hunter Renfro, I'm surprised, is ahead of Terry McLaurin.
Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I saw that. Surprise.
Those two. Honestly, even to an extent, Brandon Cooks. I'm surprised Brandon Cooks. I mean, he is Mr. Reliable.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. Any offense, Brandon Cooks, is he playing? Yes, he'll perform.
Mm-hmm.
That's who he is.
That's what he does.
But Elijah Moore and Hunter Renfro, wide receivers 23 and 24, are ahead of Terry McLaurin,
Michael Pittman,
in the current 2022 standings.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And behind him, you got Jerry Jeudy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like you said, Devonta Smith, Thielen, who's on the wrong side. He's an older gentleman. Jerry Jeudy, Odell, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney. Those are like the next six guys. So he's probably right where he should be. Maybe a couple spots higher. I think he's better than 25, in my opinion.
I mean, there's a lot of guys here in these early 30s where I'm like, that's it. That's all they have.
Yeah. But it just speaks to how deep wide receivers are, and if you draft right, you're gonna, if you play your cards right. And I think wide receiver heavy, and streaming one running back and having a solid back, I think you're gonna do all right.
Right, yeah, and I mean, a couple weeks ago we talked about guys like, again, Elijah Moore, Hunter Renfro, that you can get in the fifth round, and so Terry McLaurin right now is a 5th to 6th round player.
Wow.
Give me.
I can't believe you just said. I can't believe those words came out of your mouth, Stephen.
Just give me that all day in terms of the upside.
Yeah.
Again, and all the names that we mentioned after that, the Amon-Ra St. Browns, the Adam Thielens, Jerry Jeudy. Yes, he was injured. You give him a quarterback, that is a solid wide receiver, if not a wide receiver one upside guy. Wide receiver one saying top 12. Gotcha. However, don't want to get that far down the rabbit hole on where I'm putting projections. But we talked about how shallow running back can be if you don't sit and go after running back right away. Same thing, obviously, at tight end. We know how shallow the position can be, or just how volatile it can be. In all regards, just looking at the fact that you're really 40 deep at wide receiver, there is nothing that should be stopping you from saying, I don't want to go out and spend a 1st or 2nd round pick on a wide receiver in 2022, because I know the value exists in the mid to late rounds.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it speaks to it. If you just follow I can't repeat what you just said, so I think, it's a great point. And wide receivers, as you look at, I was just trying to bring up some names in like the 50s, like some of the rankings in the 50s here. I'm just going to throw some names out here, but Christian Kirk, Van Jefferson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Rondell Moore, Jarvis Landry. Those are like 48 to 52, and those guys all put up weeks where they would have won you some games, and that's value,
Right.
you know. And I think, you know, a guy like Corey Davis, almost 60, wide receiver 60 in a, you know, full PPR. There are so many guys in the list, as you know. What about Michael Thomas? What do you think about a guy like that? You know, we talked about him before. And as we move forward, you know, he's right around wide receiver 37, 38. Do you see him being in a position of returning to star power if he leaves New Orleans?
I mean, this is now what, 2 years that we've been without a Michael Thomas being the dominant self that he was when he first broke into the league.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect out of him. He's one of those guys where I feel like he should still be ranked much lower than where he is, but at the same time, I understand why he's ranked there. Just because people have the bias of this was the wide receiver one in a recent time period.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he can still do it. He just hasn't shown that he can do it with the quarterback not named Drew Brees. And I don't think he's ever going to get back there. I think that the attitude is obviously a problem as well, which definitely plays into it. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be dealt with, or I guess just kind of they're going to let him be who he is with Dennis Allen as the coach now. I don't think that's going to fly. This is another guy where cut or trade situations, and that's not a really healthy contract to deal with those types of things either. But I don't want to touch him. Like I want nothing to do with him. Like he's one of those guys where he can sink a draft really quickly if you put up enough capital to go and get him in your drafts. Even if he is healthy. We don't even know if he's healthy. We thought he was going to be healthy in October. Where did that get us? Well, I didn't take a surgery that I should have had 6 months ago. Oh, now I'm going to have it. I mean, it's so damn dumb. Just the mismanagement of it all.
Yeah.
Hey,
no. It's and you know, he's fallen right around, I think, you know, getting drafted in like this 70 slot, you know, and people are getting him like in the 70 to 80 range, you know. I don't know, man. It's tough. I hate to see it because I'm a big fan of Michael Thomas's. I was hoping, you know, there might have been a chance that, you know, he would be a Bear at one point, you know, but as you look at it, those types of injuries with that type of skill set, you know, it's tough. And you brought up his name before. I just want to circle back to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do you see him as a guy that a lot of people are going to reach for this year, coming off a breakout 2021 with the Jared Goff, or did they go out and get an actual quarterback, or what do you think?
I don't know who they'd get. I really don't. You know, I want to think that Amon-Ra St. Brown put up the numbers.
Did we say it wrong?
Did. Say what?
Did I say it wrong? Amon-Ra St. Brown? I apologize. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, whatever.
I apologize.
But what he did was, I want to believe that it's more because of his ability versus the inability of the Lions roster, which I think is a very strong possibility that the Lions literally had no one else to throw to. And so it was, let's feed St. Brown the ball every single down. Which, Bob, I mean, it became the Amon-Ra St. Brown show. That's ultimately what it turned into. I don't see it happening again. Can he put up some decent numbers? Yeah. I just don't think it's going to be at the clip that we anticipated it to be in the second half of the season.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I was just curious. You know, a lot of people talking, you know, he jumped up the rankings this year. I mean, what do you have? He had, I think in the final 6 games, he almost had 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. So obviously he's looking at like a wide receiver 2 heading into 2022. But I mean, I don't trust many Detroit offensive players outside of DeAndre Swift. And then we talked about last week is unless it's a PPR league, you're not going to want to draft Swift anyway, because he's definitely PPR relevant, and that's about it based on the amount of carries he's getting. I think he doesn't touch the ball more than 14 times a game. So that was last week's show. So, but we talked about some receivers. Do you want to get into some free agents? Do you want to talk about where we're thinking some of these guys may go?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. All right. Are we doing projections? Are we doing, some pontification? Are we just going to kick around the list and talk about where we see them going, or what's the best fit? How do you want to play it as we talk about the free agents here?
Also to answer Bob's comment, I don't know if
they did.
Yeah, Ben Johnson.
Yep.
I don't know who the hell Ben Johnson is here.
Makes sense. Should have been bent over. But
he was originally joined the Lions as an offensive quality control coach before serving as the tight ends coach from 2020 to 2021. TJ Hawkinson didn't do shit. There's not much there to go off of. Maybe they'll feed TJ Hawkinson the ball finally. He can live up to the 2021 hype that never happened. I wasted all my top draft picks on.
Me too.
I'm not bitter.
No, me neither, man. Oh, fucking A, that killed me. I wasted way too many picks on that guy this year.
Let's talk here. Here's one guy. I don't know. He's not a free agent right now. Obviously, he's gonna be. Say what?
He's gonna be.
He might get traded, depending on how they want to handle it.
Did you say this name already?
We haven't.
I thought you were gonna. Okay, go ahead.
Calvin Ridley, the Atlanta Falcons. By all accounts, they have made it known that he's gonna be playing somewhere else. He pretty much was like, "Yeah, I want nothing to do with how bad Atlanta is." Falcons owner Arthur Blank saying that Ridley may look for a fresh start with a new team. We love him to stay in Atlanta. Whether or not he wants to do that, he may decide that he wants a fresh start somewhere else. He's.
It's a ringing endorsement from ownership, huh?
Yeah.
We want you, bud. But if you want to go somewhere else, by all means, go and test that out. And best of luck to you. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out of here, buddy. That's shitty, but could be a good thing for specific NFC North team. But we're nowhere going to get another Ridley. We fucked up for the other one, so why would he want to come and play in Chicago? So, where do you see him going?
I keep falling back to the Chargers, where one of these guys is going to.
They're a weapon away. Yeah, they need that. Yeah,
it's just one. That's it. And there's so many options out there for him. I just don't know if they're necessarily going to pull the trigger, and they're saving all of this cap space to give Justin Herbert that extension that he's obviously.
Got to pay Mike Williams too, though.
He's not going to come back. Mike Williams is gone.
Because he's a free agent, so he's a guy that a lot of teams are interested in. I mean, he definitely played up to, he played up to the billing. 28 years old. I mean, what do you think?
I tell you, Mike Williams reminds me a lot of Bernard Berrien when he hit free agency. You remember that? And he was, here's this big field stretcher. He's able to get the job done. And then he went to the Vikings and just kind of flamed out there.
Yeah, he was bad
with Minnesota. That's what Mike Williams' trajectory is in my mind, where we saw him disappear for games. We saw him disappear for several games after the hot stretch. And I feel like it's going to be more of the same, where some teams might rely on him as a wide receiver one, and that's not him. He is a complimentary guy that can make the big play from time to time, but that's just not something that is going to work for any NFL team. And it's been on display for the last 2 years now with a very good quarterback throwing him the ball.
True. I didn't realize how inconsistent he was. I think I'm looking here. He's got, 6 games of double-digit points. That's it. 5, 6, 7. Oh, I lied. 8. All right, so 50% of the games he played. But still, yeah, as of a wide receiver 1 or 2, do you want 50% of your games to have single digits?
I mean, it's not bad. Obviously, it's not bad. I mean, and the guy still finished as wide receiver 10 on the year. So, I mean, to that extent, I mean, how much can you really argue that, like, oh, well, you know, he was a bum at points, but he kind of was. He kind of was a
Yeah.
bum at
Okay.
points. Really,
I think Cairo
Miami.
brings up a good point here. With
That'd be an
respects to
interesting
Ridley to
point.
Miami, and you look at teams that have draft capital, right? Miami's one of them. Detroit, right? They got those picks from LA. I mean, Arthur Blank could be a complete asshole and ship him to Detroit. Get a first round picks, you know. I mean, or what about like does Philly have a bunch of picks this year? Or let's see, the Giants, the Jets, the Dolphins. Who else? Yeah, Philly.
Yeah, Philly. I think that, yeah.
They
There's
made
there's a lot
yeah.
of 2-pick first round teams. I don't think a first rounder.
Oh, Philly's got 3 first. Okay, yeah. So I mean, I bet. I mean, granted, they missed on Jalen Reagor. You know, I mean, I shouldn't say he missed. He just didn't step. I mean, they overdrafted him, obviously. I mean, Minnesota's still laughing their way to the podium after they got Justin Jefferson on the next pick. But that wouldn't be a bad place for him either. So Miami, Philly, where else? Jags. Ooh, that's a Michael Jacksonville.
Michael didn't like my Mike Williams take. I'm offended. Okay. Last thing I'm going to say about that. When dude has 50% of his fantasy points in 4 games in PPR leagues, you can't trust that.
That's why he's a wide receiver 44 in 2022. You know, I mean, there's a reason he dropped going into the rankings from 2021. You know, there's just some inconsistency there. You know, and he did, like, to your point, he had Herbert slinging the rock. You know, I mean, he had a good statistical season, and we're not saying that he's not a great football player by any means, but we're talking fantasy, baby. And you know, it's tough because when I look at those numbers, he had 170 total fantasy points on the year, and actually, that's just a standard league. So I apologize. That's inaccurate. So, but nonetheless, he still just is too inconsistent for the money that he's going to get going into 2022. And I think he's going to end up on a team that's going to overpay, which you don't want to do when it comes to drafting, overdrafting him or reaching when it comes to drafting Williams. That's just, it's rare that you and you definitely go hand in hand on that one, Stephen. But, I'm with you on Mr. Williams. I'd stay away.
They've gotten burned one too many times. Too.
Yeah, true. You're jaded. I get it.
Apologies though. Before we got
I mean, is there anybody? Does Jacksonville go out? You know, they got a new coach. They got a whole new. I mean, they should tear down all the shit they built when Urban started, and just redo the whole fucking facility. But I think Jacksonville is going to be. It's going to be slim pickings for a couple of years. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I mean, I think for Jacksonville's sake that they're definitely going to need to surround Trevor Lawrence with some talent because DJ Chark is a free agent.
Yeah.
DJ Chark hasn't been a guy that either NFL teams nor fantasy players have been able to rely on for quite some time
3
now.
years.
And outside of that, is there really a lot to hang your hat on down in Jacksonville? I mean, I'm trying to I mean, you got Laviska Shenault that's down there. He's one of those guys where he hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype. You have the ageless Marvin Jones Jr. that spent some time in Cincinnati as well as Detroit as that deep ball threat. But again, I want to say, is he like 32? He's way, he's going to be 32 next year.
Yeah.
There's nothing else there.
No.
And so, yeah, there's a possibility that, hell, A-Rob Could he go back to Jacksonville?
You should, you bum. I'm just kidding. He'll probably come back to Chicago. Who knows?
Oh, don't say that. But yeah, I think there's a good possibility that one of these top free agent names could make their way down to Florida, to Jacksonville.
They got money to spend.
You think about it. I mean, you have Doug Peterson, that is a Super Bowl winning coach, despite what anybody may think of him. And people might argue that the Philly front office is what really screwed the pooch in what has been built in Philadelphia since then. But being able to, again, throw or get catches from Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft, with actual competent coaching staff now, there is some promise there that I think they could sell one of these wide receivers on to come and, be the guy and the key in this offense.
Okay. I mean, you talk a good, you're selling sunny Florida, you're looking at it, and it's something that could bring somebody down there, and you got the quarterback that,
no income tax.
Very true. When you got the big giant quarterback who's coming into his second year, and you're hoping that he's able to step up, gets out of the Urban Meyer nonsense. And, Doug Peterson is that tried and true professional that brings some stability to the franchise that should be good for a young quarterback, a young running back room. But if they could land a top wide receiver to go with those top draft picks, and they can really build around, whether it's linemen. I mean, it's such an offensive and defensive line heavy draft. They could really bolster both sides of the ball with the picks they have, where they're drafting. So Jags, they could be on a quick turnaround, but it is Jacksonville, and, we probably may not see that, but that is a good point. They may be able to bring somebody in and surprise some teams. They're going to have to overpay, but, guy like Mike Williams, who's trying to play for that bag, would maybe a candidate for a guy, a team that, like Jacksonville, as we talked about that previously. I don't know. It's a good point, though.
I feel like there's just like a major shakeup in general that we're probably in for with everything that's going on in free agency, that there's enough names that can make you think, damn, like this can really turn into a seismic shift one way or the other. If they do end up re-signing or going with a new team, and really too, because I think free agency overall, the belief is more often than not, players really never live up to the contracts. And given the fact that there are so many skill position players that are hitting the free agent block this year, the question becomes, is that going to keep up, or is this going to be one of those anomaly years where, you are able to rely on these guys that are potentially moving into new offenses and new quarterbacks and new systems and things that they're not used to. I struggle with that. I definitely struggle with that, especially wide receiver. I mean, obviously A-Rob was an exception to the rule when he came to Chicago. Outside of that, though, like it's hard to think of wide receivers who signed in free agency that found as much success in the previous spot as they did in their new spot, if you think about it.
And which is such a contrast to, like, you look at the quarterbacks that have left and then gone and won Super Bowls, right? And it's like, you think many other players would be like, shit, let's jump ship, go somewhere else, let's try to ring chase and do that. But that normally comes at a price, meaning you're sacrificing something. And it's not that you're normally not taking that big money bag. You're actually going to take a little less. So you're right, Stephen. I mean, we could bring up the top free agent wide receiver contracts over the last 5-6 years. And there are some successes there, but there's a reason the money's not guaranteed. And, the longevity of gentlemen's careers just don't cut it. And it's such dependent on quarterback play, to offensive line, to coach. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. There aren't many just tried and true wide receivers that are going to go out and give you 25, 22 points a week outside of Cooper Kupp and, Javonte Adams right now. But I see a little smile on your face. And I just wanted to add, like 3 out of the top 5 wide receivers all have like torn ACLs, like Godwin, Beckham, who else? Not 3 out of the top 5, but DJ Shark's coming off an injury.
Gallup.
It's
a lot of injuries.
I'm trying to think of somebody else, but Alan Lazard was hurt, but he didn't miss. He didn't have it. Fuck him anyway. But you know, but still, there's some guys that are really hurt that teams are going to pay for. They're going to pay, and it's not going to be a prove it deal. They're going because they have to try to get ahead of the game and get a guy in a 3-year deal to bring them in because they're hurting and they're going to have to take that risk. So I hope the Bears aren't one of those teams, but it's going to be really interesting to see how the chips fall this year.
You know what's really weird? I'm looking at last year's stats. Who do you believe, if just thinking about it, who do you believe was the top wide receiver that signed with his current team as a free agent?
Say that again?
2021. So a guy that is with his current team, so who he played with in 2021, was playing with them. He joined the team as a free agent, not through trade, not drafted, but signed as a free agent, who the top wide receiver was in 2021.
I almost have to cheat. I mean, I don't
I don't know if you'll even get it by cheating. I really don't. That's how bad it is.
Nelson Aguilar?
Close. You're right team, wrong player.
What the fuck's his name? He's fast. What the hell is his name?
He's fast. Look at that guy go.
No, it's the other dude. They went and got 2 guys. They got 2 wide receivers the day they signed Aguilar. And who's the other one?
Kendrick Bourne.
There we go. Kendrick Bourne. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a sprinter. Is he an Olympic sprinter?
Is he the one that was a sprinter? He might have been.
I thought he was. I could be wrong. Maybe that's Marquise Goodwin. I could be completely wrong there, but.
Yeah, because, you've got Amari Cooper, who was acquired by trade from the Raiders when he made it to the Cowboys.
Okay.
You've got Stephon Diggs, who was traded for the first-round pick to Buffalo. That's it. That is it. Everyone else is either with their current team. And Brandon Cooks, he was traded to Houston.
Wow, that's saying something.
But that shows you that free agent wide receivers aren't something that is a commodity that works well in this league or didn't work well in this league. And again, this could be bucking a trend depending on if some of these guys do end up going to different pastures, not necessarily greener pastures. But it's eye-opening. It's definitely eye-opening.
I think it's kind of relative with respect to the amount of money these guys are getting paid now with, at the skill positions. Before a lot of the top wide receivers weren't commanding they were getting paid, but nothing like, the top guys now. So a lot of receivers would re-sign. They'd take the stability and the long-term deal and, whether it's 3 or 4 year deal, but they have that continuity with the same team.
Kenny Galladay.
Exactly. The Bears almost paid him $75 million or whatever it was for 4 years when they brought him in trying to get Allen Robinson to sign. That was all, dog and pony show. But, you bring up a valid point, and it's, big money wide receivers. It's like baseball. How many $300 million contracts pan out? It's just the big money deals typically don't turn out. Especially at those positions. There are quarterbacks that tend to live up to those expectations just based on the importance, but it's still hard you can debate that all day long.
Lesson learned, and maybe Bears shouldn't spend money at wide receiver.
Go get a guy. Round 2. Let's go.
Homegrown talent always works.
Yeah.
Always works. It's a league of homegrown talent. That's all there is to it.
I like that.
Hey, we'll see what ends up happening.
We'll be talking about wide receiver dynasty guys soon too anyway, so we'll be able to bring up some guys and talk about some potential targets for Justin Fields. It'll be beautiful.
That we will. And I mean, Darnell Mooney, yes, we've talked about it numerous times.
Sorry, Claudio.
Great 2 or 3, probably 3. They need 2 more weapons. They need 2 more bona fide weapons to go out and play offense. End of story.
It was funny. We were staying home. I've been home the last few days and watching. My son loves to watch YouTube highlights of the Bears, and he, like the Bears put out like their highlight tape. So we were watching Darnell Mooney. We were watching. Well, of course, Justin Fields. We love watching the Justin Fields one because he just anyway. Darnell Mooney, what's going on, right? And it's like a 7-minute video. I forget what it is, and Conrad just goes, "How come there aren't many touchdown videos?" And I was like, "You son of a bitch, bro." I was like, "Yeah, you're right, man. He didn't have that many."
He's seeing through the fan that trying to lure him to the navy and orange.
It was funny. We had a good laugh. It was pretty good. Yeah, I'm like, next year it'll be a little longer. Maybe it'll be 10 minutes because we'll have some touchdowns to cheer for. Or celebrate.
Can only hope.
Fucking A, man.
Before we wrap things up here, one last question. We talked about this last 2 weeks, but one guy at wide receiver, maybe we've talked about him, maybe we haven't, depending on where he is, that you are adamant on being a value, if not one of the top names at the wide receiver position in fantasy in 2022.
All right. So I was looking at rankings, right? And like a name that I was surprised when I saw it. I'm like, really? Like people thinking top 5, top 10? It's AJ Brown. He's top 10 PPR. He's top, I think, 5 dynasty for 2022. I was a little taken back when I saw it, and then looking at it, I'm like, okay. I didn't realize a few things. One, he's 24 years old. He's been in the league 3 years, and he, outside of getting hurt this year, he would have gone up each season with respects to receiving yards, targets, the whole 9. He almost had the same number of targets in 2021 that he had in 2020. I see him as being, imagine you're able to get Aaron Rodgers or some crazy thing where they get rid of Tannehill and they go out and get a quarterback. I'm not saying he's going to go to Rodgers, Tennessee, but it's just one of those rumors you see, and he's building a house out there and all this other bullshit. But
to that point, you'd be amazed at how well that deal could work after June 1st.
With Tannehill and the whole thing, right? Like the way it all kind of plays out. I saw some of that. And if that was to happen, I think, you may see, he may end up being wide receiver 1, and so I'm a big, I'm all over the place on AJ Brown. I really liked him this year. I ended up having to trade him when I was dealing with a running back situation. I had talked about it earlier, but he ended up getting hurt. So, but regardless, I think AJ Brown is that guy for me. He had played in 13 games this year, had 105 targets with Tannehill as the quarterback, 63 catches, 5 touchdowns. He's somebody that I think is he's looking at a pretty big year for 2022. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You definitely did.
Right. What about you?
It's, I go back and forth with a couple guys. I really want to avoid the recency bias of one specific guy, but I can't avoid it. I think that the writing is on the wall that there is the potential for him to put it all together.
Okay.
And again, given the recency bias, the last game of the year, and the fact that he was, on a record-setting run there in his final game of the year, heading up to the lovely northern New York and the Buffalo Bills, Gabe Davis, man, I'm ready for him to turn it on. Wide receiver 42 is where he is currently at. And man, if there's one guy that's going to be that third-year breakout, I got a feeling it's going to be him. Emmanuel Sanders probably gone. Cole Beasley is in the final year of his deal. He is a cut candidate as well to clear the path for Gabe Davis to become that guy. And we saw the connection that he had with Josh Allen.
Absolutely.
That's got to carry over. It's got to carry over just as for what he was doing on the field against the Chiefs. I mean, you don't see that and say, okay, that was a one-time thing. And he's shown flashes in the past. He showed flashes his rookie year, really didn't put it all together the sophomore season. But I think year 3 is where it really all comes together. And given some of the other names that are floating around that tier with him, it makes a lot more sense from an upside standpoint to go out and get Gabe Davis. And I think he could very well finish as a top 20, if not a top 15 wide receiver in 2022.
Okay. I could see that. We've talked about him, he's a guy that young kid doesn't turn 23 until, April 1st. So yeah, he's in his 2 years were identical almost statistically. So if you were able to just give him some more opportunity, you would think that he would produce even more, So I like that. That's a good pick. I think he's got big things coming in, in store for him for 2022. I like where your head's at on that one, man.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a big dude too, 6'3" and 212. He doesn't necessarily look the part when he's on the field. He looks a lot smaller, but it's just that speed and shiftiness. He can definitely go about it as well. So on the hype train already. Let's go. Got 6 months to get through draft season, but I'll be getting plenty of that Gabe Davis stock as the season moves along here. But
you and me both, buddy.
We'll get rolling. We'll get rolling on it.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to break down the wide receivers for dynasty and rookies coming in, because there's some guys that I think could, potentially make some noise for guys out there. I know someone's looking for a big kind of bruising possession receiver. I think I saw Mike was looking for an AJ Brown, DK Metcalf style. I mean, like Drake London's a big dude at like 6'5", but
like big dude.
Yeah. So, just to speak to that. But I look forward to breaking down some rookies and talking about that with you as we move forward this offseason, man. It's gonna be a lot to talk about.
That we do. Plenty of chatter. We are less than a month away from free agency kicking off as well, which is nuts. To think that is happening, considering the season just ended. All this stuff pushed back an extra week. Throwing everything off. Yeah. We don't know what's going on, but hey, it's going to come faster than you think, and all of the ramifications will slowly follow thereafter, and we'll be here to break it all down from a fantasy football perspective when it does happen. So next week, get more into the dynasty side of things, talk some rookies, see what we're getting at from that end of things. There's plenty of talent. It's just a matter of it's not as top heavy on the top picks. A lot of mid-round stuff happening, so maybe a little muddied up versus what we've seen in years past. But we'll be here to talk all about it over the next few weeks. But as for now, that's going to do it for us here on this episode of One Up Fantasy. We do thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in to Keeping It 100 tomorrow night with Phil and Shane as they continue the off-season Bears talk and everything happening at Hallis Hall with the new regime. There's new positions in the front office being created every day with the coaching staff. It's just one thing after another. We're learning all sorts of new fun things about what this new regime is doing.
The new era is bringing in some fresh change, man. It's a beautiful thing, man.
Let's see it pay off. Let's see it pay off.
That's right. Get us some weapons. Get us some fucking guys that can make plays. Let Justin Fields eat, and let's go to work, motherfuckers. Let's do the damn thing. What the hell are we doing? Sorry. Yeah. All right, that's fine.
We just have all this pent-up aggression. I think that's the best way to put it. We have this pent-up aggression based on everything that we have going on. And Jason McKee, former Bears fullback, joining the show tomorrow night as well. So plenty of fun there. So again, that happens all at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central on TTNL and Chi City Sports across all social media channels. So until next Tuesday, we'll be back here, same time, same place, more fantasy talk. For Chris Jackle, I'm Stephen Johnson. Again, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll talk to you next Tuesday night. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Have a great night.